Kenya, that has got one of the 7 wonders of the world, the Masai Mara wild beast migration. We get 2.5 million tourists, and we earn 144 billion from tourism. Before you present this horrible finance bill that you guys are about to present, ask yourself, what can we do so that Kenya starts getting 10 million tourists? And that's a fifth of our population. Remember, Spain gets twice its population.
Hey there, and welcome to Fanya Mambo Africa. Always excited. Fanya Mambo, the man, the legend, is here today again with us. How are you?
Thank you. I am not a legend, but I thank you for the honor. I am happy to be here as always. It's an honor.
It's on the social spaces, they are treating you like a legend.
Yes.
Because you seem to have a lot of information of what goes on behind the scenes, or you seem to have a prophecy in yourself.
I listen to Kenyans a lot.
You listen?
I take time to listen to them, and I reflect what they tell me.
All right. Yeah. So earlier today, the president posted that he received the names of the people that are proposed to lead the IEBC panel. What is your expectation from that, and what's now the way forward for Kenya?
I have no expectations. I just expect that their cronies will be in that list. IEBC will never be a surprise to the political class. Let's start from there. They will never pick someone they never wanted to pick. Actually, the process was done so that they can rubber stamp who they wanted. For us as Kenyans, all we wanted is an IEBC as expected by the Constitution. And because it says 7 Kenyans, we are ready for the 7 Kenyans. Once we have them, we have by-elections. And some of us are eager to go to the ballots right now and fill those seats. There are so many Kenyans who are willing to fill those seats. We've lost quite a number of people, and they need to refill those seats. So we are ready for IEBC. We are ready for IEBC in whatever shape and form. Kenyans told me one thing. Even if these politicians put their own brothers and sisters, it will be sad for their own brothers and sisters to see how Kenyans are rejecting them. The votes will be too many against them, that their own brothers and sisters who've been put in IEBC can do nothing about. So give us IEBC. It doesn't matter whose names are there. Give Kenyans an IEBC, and they will use what you give them. And the votes will be counted and shock on everybody.
What's next steps for Kenyans at this point? Because this is something Kenyans have been asking for the last, say, a year plus.
The president, once they announce a name, the names will be gazetted, and then boom, they'll go there and they'll choose their own chairman. But as it is right now, the most important thing for Kenyans, and I'm telling Kenyans, do not belabor to even think about anything that the law says about it. All you want to do is get an IEBC. Once it's duly constituted, and these are the commissioners as this is the chair, twende kazi. Because we want to show those who are in the political class that Kenyans right now have got their preferred candidates for every other seat. And they know who they do not want. And the votes against the people they do not want will be so many that it will not matter who is IEBC chairman. Yeah.
So nobody should worry as much.
We are not worried. We are not worried. You know, I usually say, why are you worried about 7 people? If in a constituency you decide that you want Fanya Mambo to be your MP, and you all rally behind that, like my place, the Greater South, has about 120,000 voters. How many IEBC officials should we have there, or policemen? The will of the people will prevail. There's nothing you can do against 120,000 people who are coming to offer themselves to a democratic process. Come with your policemen, come with your IEBC, come with everything. There's 120,000 of us in the Greater South. You can't send more. And that will happen in every other constituency. The will of the people will be supreme.
That's true. And of course, some of the places where we expect elections is where we've lost members of parliament, MCAs, and anyone who's been in leadership per se. And key among them is the MP who was shot about a week ago, yes. MP Were.
Yes. And
the sad thing for me, or now what concerns me, is that as Kenyans, we've lost empathy, because if you see how people reacted to that, there are videos claiming that there were things he did that were not right. which we can't argue at this point because, I mean, the dead tell no tales. But just looking at it, at how people have become detached to maybe sympathy or empathy for that point, for the political class, like what's the gap?
It's very simple if you ask me. And why it is simple is this. First, there is the close-knit family, and our condolences to them. He had a wife, our condolences to her, and the children. For them, they've lost someone in their family, and it is painful for them, regardless of what we think. But it's a member of parliament who came and told us that Kenyans have healed and moved on, as if the death of other fellow Kenyans was not important. Now that it has hit parliament, they are busy complaining everywhere and saying there's insecurity, we need beef up security, the police are doing nothing, they are shouting all sorts of things. Because wanasema kwa Kiswahili, mkuki kwa nguruwe ni mtamu lakini kwa binadamu ni mchungu. For them now that it's hit them close, they are thinking, oh, wait a minute. Or kumbe, this thing can be painful. When you do bad things to people, I've always told you, they will come and urinate on your grave. They will not show any remorse. The political class has done bad things to Kenyans. And that's why Kenyans don't feel it. They are not affected when it hits the political class. In fact, they feel like they can smite it on their faces. You remember the Honorable Elachi lost a son. And you remember the number of things and the kind of things that were said. I think I have told politicians, you are a public servant. And you are a servant of the people. Only do those things that will not shame you tomorrow. Only do those things that will give you a human face and will make people want to love you and associate with you. But now when you behave like a tyrant, I mean, it's going to come back and bite you. Yeah.
So that's why the empathy is sort of lost?
You know, why would Kenyans want to pretend about how they feel? Kenyans are very honest with themselves and they tell you how exactly they feel about you. When you complain about Kenyans not having empathy, it's not the problem. The problem is not that Kenyans don't have empathy. We should be asking ourselves, why have they not had empathy? So many things have been done to Kenyans that no other people from other nationalities cannot withstand. You know, it's like taking a child and, you know, putting them through so much that they lose that part of them that makes them feel like they're children anymore. So we've been put through so much as Kenyans. Yani ni kama feelings ziliisha. Yeah, now you work from our brains and our Kenyans are saying kaende, they don't care.
Whoa. Yeah. And one of the key things that has happened over the weekend is that we saw someone hurl a stone, or is it a shoe, that landed on the president's hand. And it's now a public debate. Should we be so angry that we want to hurl stones, or is it shoes at the president? Or where do we draw the line between respect for the office and the person?
Let me ask something that UDA would associate with. The president is still okay, isn't he? You know, there's a child who was shot some time back. And the first question was, the child is alive, isn't he? I mean, if the roads had been fixed in that area, that shoe would not have had that amount of dust to start with. Number two, there has been this craving in this administration to show a closeness to the people which is not there, and to show that they have crowds, which they don't. And because of that, they have thrown away all security protocol. If you saw the Mount Kenya tour, what was happening during the Mount Kenya tour? They allowed 200-300 borders to follow the presidential motorcade so closely so that they are available for the next rally in the next place. So they have allowed themselves to breach presidential security so blatantly that even now you can imagine. You see, the shoe is something that is not even propelled by anything else other than human effort. And it got to the president that quickly. How much more would have happened if that projectile had been propelled by, you know, like the way a bullet is pushed by a gun? If it was a weapon, it would be discussing something very different. The shoe was a demonstration of how fragile the presidential security is and how easily a target he can become for people of ill will, people who hate this country, people who would want it to go into anarchy. I think the president also needs to stop exposing himself to harm. He's renovating Harambee House. at a cost of 2.3 billion. Yet he never goes to that office. Why don't you renovate his Land Cruiser? Because he spends more time on his Land Cruiser. I think this is the time for the head of state now to go back. Work from Harambee House. Work from State House. You've put the country in a permanent campaign mode. And I think that shoe thing, in as much as I don't support the throwing of the shoe, it's a wake-up call to us as a nation. It's a wake-up call to the political class, to his security, and to him, the person, to say, wait a minute, isn't this the time when I should now go back to my office and just sit and work from the office?
But the whole idea of citizens imagining they can do that, do we then not understand? Because Kenya has had a history of the same. I mean, from what we read, it was done to President Kenyatta Sr. in Kisumu, where they threw eggs. So when citizens now start disrespecting the office, what's the danger at this point?
I don't think citizens have disrespected the office of the president. I think the leadership has put yourself in a place where it's been disrespected. There are people you respect in your life today, but you don't respect them because they demanded for respect from you. There's a way in which a certain bishop, a certain person, a business person, a corporate guy carries themselves, and you just automatically respect them. I think let us earn respect as leaders. The head of state needs to earn the respect of Kenyans. There's just a way he can speak, carry himself. Like Mandela. We never touched Mandela. We never encountered Mandela. But why did we respect Mandela? Because the way he carried himself was in a way that people revered him. People would have given anything to have a handshake with Mandela and a photo with Mandela. You must place yourself in a position of respect for people to respect you.
What is this way that you would want to see our president maybe?
Number one,
himself?
Stop abducting young people. Stop killing people. Make apologies for those who've lost their lives. Stop adding taxations to Kenyans. Take money that was meant for school capitation and put it into school capitation. This is now earning respect of Kenyans. When Kenyans start forming Harambee groups to raise money for university, something they've not done in the last 20 years, something is wrong with you as a head of state. When people wake up and hear, Kenya has lost 104 billion to a amorpha system called SHA, when people wake up and hear all the kinds of things we are doing, they lose respect for the presidency. Because now they see it as an extortionist gang that is based at State House and they're just extorting Kenyans.
I'm just wondering, how do we restore the so-called respect you're saying that is lost for the presidency, not the president? Because those are two different entities.
The presidency was respected because it was an enigma. It was this one thing that is not common in every marketplace. The presidency was respected because they hear of this thing that, like if you go to the UK, when the Queen was alive, the Queen she had an address. And that address has been hallowed for a very long time. And people used to know that she comes out once in a while. I mean, why do we respect the Pope? It's because it's not too commonly available everywhere. Gold is valuable because it is not available on every other shop. When you want gold, you go to the shop for gold. Then now gold retains its value. But when you take gold and start hawking it on every other street and putting it in every other jewelry shop, then it ceases to become gold. The presidency is a symbol of national unity. It is one thing that, and that's why they give them those motorbikes, the outriders, the guard of honor. The reason they do that is to keep it in a place where it's held in high esteem. But when you remove it and come and put it on Land Cruiser shops and distribute it in every other market, having conversations that every other MCA, those are the promises that MCAs were making. Those are the promises that MPs were making. You've removed the presidency from where it was, talking about the trillions that the country earns, to a place where now the presidency is coming to discuss a local market, a local butchery, a small feeder road, and a shoe to the president's face. Then it has lost its luster.
So are you saying the president shouldn't be mixing with the citizens who he serves in this scenario?
Not in this particular manner. Not in this particular manner. Let me explain something.
Is there a constitutional definition of the manner in which a president should mix with the citizens?
I'll explain. Look at it this way. When Kenya Kwanza was campaigning, Kenyans told them that we want market. Now, a market has two definitions. I'll start with the simplest one, which is the physical structure. The president has gone and created, like now they were in this place called, is it Migori?
Yes.
So they have created what I would call China Market Migori branch. The other day they were creating China Market Nyandarua, China Market Moranga, China Market Theka, China Market everywhere place. Why do I call it China Market Migori branch? It's because when you move from every market in this country today and you move in, 80% of the things that are being sold in that market are not Kenyan products. Now, when you think about it deeply and keenly, it means that we've created a branch here where China can come and sell their goods using our people. In fact, we've even given them sales agents who are very cheap. And so our people, we wake up and leave their farms and come and occupy a space that was built by taxpayers' money. And that space that was built by taxpayers' money, they occupy it to sell goods that are not ours. Can you imagine the bulk of our onions today are from Tanzania? The bulk of our eggs are from Uganda. So when you create China Market, Migori, and then it has a Uganda Avenue inside where eggs from Uganda are sold, and a Tanzania Avenue where onions and tomatoes from Tanzanians are sold, what have you got left as a country? If I was president, I would have been launching a market that we are saying everything sold in that market is made in Kenya. Now you have a conversation. But as we stand right now, we are not making toothpicks and underwear and handkerchief 60 years after independence. Why are we launching markets? We are simply creating a market for Chinese products in our country. And we need to be very careful. The second definition of a market is when Kenyans said they are looking for market. If I was president right now and I live for China, I wouldn't go to China with a begging bowl. I would go to China and say, we have researched and we have learned that the demand for avocado in China is insatiable. I mean, every single avocado that Kenya can produce, China would buy. And they would ask whether we have more. So without moving people into a stupid physical thing called China market, every other person at home would have 20, 30, 50 avocado trees. And they would have circles that would help them, just, like the tea and everything, like the milk cooperatives. And they would collect their avocados, and these avocados can be shipped to China. Then people would make money. Now that is a market. That is creating a market. See, hizi soko Ruto anajenga, hizi sasa wanafanya ni upuzi. They are using our taxpayers' money to put up structures and buildings where our people sit down and sell Chinese commodities. As opposed to creating a market. Hawajui, hawana common sense. They don't understand what it means to create a market. Creating a market is going to China and talking to them and telling them, we know you have insatiable demand for timber. And nowadays we have pine trees that can grow in 5 years to 10 years. If we planted, let me tell you, if you had 1 billion trees today that produce wood pine, and you harvested the whole 1 billion trees, China would buy all of them and ask you whether you have more, because their demand for timber is insatiable. Now that is called creating a market. But these people don't understand. They think that creating a market is building a stupid physical structure where our women sit every day and sell things that are from outside here. From the homes that people are in today, it is possible to go and convince those other countries that we have something called miraa that is very unique. How many countries want miraa? So that from the comfort of home, and even mogoka from Embu, how many people want mogoka?
I mean, it's been banned on several other countries, so
there are those
maybe.
that want. There are those that want. And so we are able to sell without building physical stupid structures that sell the products of other people. This is where the president's trip went amiss. It failed.
Wow. That's a very interesting perspective of looking at it, which I actually think, if adopted, could really change the way Kenya operates and maybe even work on our GDP for that matter. something else I would question, and I'm sure many people wonder, is some of these functions were actually devolved. And markets, if I am not wrong, are devolved functions among agriculture and all these other things. What happened that now the whole idea of devolution seems to have had certain things that have been plucked or pulled by the national government for different interests? And then, does it mean then our governors are just fine? Because, I mean, if they know it's devolved, then they should be working towards having it, actualizing it 100%.
Sometimes when I sit up, it means I'm about to say something intrinsically deep, something that is Fanya Mambo, something that you will not get any other place. If I was President of the Republic of Kenya, and let me help you, President Ruto, I want you to understand what your role is at the national level. Stop going to markets. You are competing with governors and MCAs. Stop it. Where should our president be? Number one, Spain has a population of about 60 million people. They get 120 million tourists. France has a population of 60 to 70 million people. They get about 80 million tourists. And I can go on. What are 80 million tourists doing in France? The bulk of them, they go to see a tower, the Eiffel Tower, a tower. What? A tower. 80 million people. They earn trillions of dollars from tourism. Kenya, that has got one of the 7 wonders of the world, the Masai Mara wild beast migration. We get 2.5 million tourists, and we earn 144 billion from tourism. Before you present this horrible finance bill that you guys are about to present, ask yourself, what can we do so that Kenya starts getting 10 million tourists? And that's a fifth of our population. Remember, Spain gets twice its population. If we can get 10 million tourists, each spending about $10,000, which is about 1.3 million, we would have, in effect, about 1.3 trillion shillings that Kenyans have not been taxed on. That just comes into the country because people came to see Masai Mara. People have come to see the birds of Kakamega Forest. People have come to see the Masai culture, which I believe is very beautiful. People have come, and when they are here and there's nowhere to go, you take them to a Rorashio ceremony. I am telling you, Wazungus would be happy to just hear Hoti Karibu and what happens. Yes, these people would be happy to be welcomed by Boni Halwale to just go and see bullfighting. We have so many things that we can offer as a country, and I can tell you 2 trillion is very little money to imagine we can get from tourism. These are the conversations that the president should be having. I have seen in today's dailies, he has 20 advisors. If the results of hiring 20 advisors and spending 2 billion is this kind of nonsense that exposes our head of state to shoes that are flying, then those 20 advisors need to be fired and they need to bring back our money.
Now that you've brought the issue of advisors up, I also read and found out that President Kibaki, who is praised to have been one of the best performing presidents, maybe even the best Kenya has only had 3 advisors. Now we hear President Ruto has 20, and I remember very well during the Gen Z demos, he said he would cut the advisors that he had at that point by 50%, meaning if they were 20, we should have had 10. So what is this that every other week we are finding a new advisor? And when you look at it, at how the Kenyan economy is, maybe, do you feel their impacts?
First and foremost, 3 of them are on legal matters, including the latest Professor Makau Mtua. They are on legal matters. Why do you need a professor to advise you and tell you that Kenya is a sovereign state and that power belongs to the people, and therefore you need to consult them before you make certain decisions? You don't need a professor to advise you on that. You can engage Kenyans in very many ways, even using their MCAs, their MPs. You can engage Kenyans if you want. I wish, because I think they're just trying to advise him on how to circumvent the law. I wouldn't understand why he would have so many of them. Otherwise, if your intention is to follow the law, even the Attorney General is enough. If they are completely and totally intent on following our Kenyan constitution, I can tell you, people who have basic Form 4 education can read the Kenyan constitution. If we need interpretation, they have not been stopped from even writing to the Supreme Court and saying, give us an advisory. The courts can sit and they can give advisory opinion to the president. They can write. So the thing is, I don't think that our head of state means well when he has these 20 advisors. It's about, now help me circumvent things.
And these advisors are Kenyans.
Yes.
Of course. I mean, we have a professor there. Yeah. Not even one. I think there are several professors.
There are 20 people. There
20,
are in today's standard newspaper. They're there.
So when we look at this now, people who are called the advisors, then are they even honest people themselves?
They're not. Like now, I saw there's one who advises them on agriculture. And I wondered, huyu sasa ametolewa wapi? Simple things. We are buying eggs from Uganda. Why? Because eggs are cheaper in Uganda than Kenya. Why? Because animal feeds are expensive in Kenya than Uganda. Why? Because the most expensive component in animal feeds is protein. Why? Because the core source of protein in this animal feeds business is soya. Now, soya is a bean. Soya. It takes about 3.5 to 4 months to grow. Now, Kenya needs 150,000 metric tons of soya. Kenya produces 10,000 tons of soya. Kenya imports 140,000 metric tons of soya. So if Kenya was serious, one of the things now I would say the president should have done through agricultural extension officers, if they had a special advisor on agriculture, and I saw her on the newspaper, is to say, how do we, now the rainy season started in around February. God has blessed us with so much rain. If these guys had planted soya in those places where soya can grow, where beans can grow, in common sense, that's what we are trying to say. If Kenya would produce 140,000 metric tons of soya, we would not import. But why do we say we don't need to import? Because it costs about 100 shillings to land 1 kg of soya here. So if you multiply 100 shillings by 140,000 metric tons, you'll see how many billions of Kenya shillings we take out of this country. So a revolution in agriculture is possible today just by saying we are encouraging farmers to plant soya. When you have a lot of soya, it means all our animal feeds, the cost will plummet. And when the cost of animal feeds plummets, it means that our eggs will be cheaper. It means our chicken will be cheaper. It means our dairy will be cheaper. I mean, the guys who are doing pig farming, it means that the cost of pork would go down. There's so much. Hata ile sausage unanunua, there's so much. Bringing down the cost of living is not those things I had the president. Unajua alisema kupunguza gharama ya maisha kiatu ikamland. And the reason is because Kenyans were seeing that direction is not going to punguza gharama ya maisha. So the presidential advisors, for me, as from where I sit, are useless if they haven't seen something as simple as that.
Okay, you explain it sounds very easier said, but seems very hard to do for Kenya for some strange reason, which cannot be explained maybe. But now when I look at it, some of the legal minds we have in this country who have raised and pointed out that Kenya is headed in the wrong direction is actually James Orengo, one of the people who did the constitution. Professor Nyong'o raised the same issue, I think, like 2-3 weeks ago. So when we have such minds who raise such issues, then they start being attacked politically, because we saw Oburu Odinga tell Orengo, if you don't want, this is our party. Well, Orengo was actually addressing national issues, and he pointed out that he has served with every president, so he knows when things are wrong. So when such messaging happens, then what do Kenyans do? Essentially,
what is the core responsibility of government? Number 1 is to protect life. Then number 2, property. Are we losing lives carelessly under this administration? Yes. Are we also losing lives to agents of this administration? Ask BBC and their documentary. Yes, we are. So are things going in the right way? If that is the fundamental reason why government exists, because before anything else is to protect human life. That is why government exists. And then property. And then all these other things. Don't build a road if there's war. Don't build a road if people are butchering one another. In fact, if they failed to do everything else and guaranteed life and security and health for people, then they have done their mandate as government. The rest are secondary, but the primary is to protect human life. So when James Orengo is speaking, yamerudi kwa basics. He's forgotten all the whole constitutional theory. And I like simplifying things for Kenyan. He's gone to the basics. Government exists to protect your life. And when they fail to protect your life and your well-being, and when they become the people now who are endangering your life, when they become the people who are abducting and torturing, when they become the people who are being associated with bodies being found in different funny spaces, including some in Mukuru, then that is a failed government. So forget your Kiingereza mingi ya constitution. I am breaking it down as a lawyer who is now doing his master's in constitutional law at the University of Nairobi, and I can tell you that the primary duty of government is protect life. Ukiwa itaka measure ya kupima, forget all those other things. Take the simplest. Are they protecting life? And if they have failed in the protection of life, then that is a failed government.
And now that you've even mentioned the story of filmmakers who were arrested over the weekend. I mean, I have two friends who are part of that group. When we get to a
Show
point...
me your friends.
In fact, it was alleged that they were associated with the making of the BBC documentary, which apparently they were not. But of course, they are filmmakers. When we were covering the demos, we were with them in the streets. So when we get to a point where now even people in the creative industry are being suppressed, then what's next? Because film is a reflection of society. So what happens next?
Tell me how government was able to arrest the people who made the film about the guy who was shooting Kenyans, but they were not able to arrest the guy in the film who was shooting Kenyans. According to this administration, the crime is not shooting and killing Kenyans. That you can get away with. The crime is recording the person who is shooting and killing Kenyans and airing. That's the crime. And that's why those who are airing the truth and saying that there's this guy holding a gun and he's shooting a Kenyan, those are the guys who are criminals. But the guy actually causing actual murder and spilling the brains of young people on tarmac is not a criminal according to this administration. That is what pains us as Kenyans. Because we would have expected, if this was a country where common sense prevails, the first thing would have been, show us that video. So this is a killer, this is a killer, this is a killer. And this is and this. So let's get those ones. But no. When you may expose the killers, you are the problem to the state. That is what is angering Kenyans the more. And then they get the government mouthpieces unleashed on us. And one of them is KJ, my MP Dagoretti South, to come and tell us on the floor of parliament that the British government has got a British agenda and they are using BBC to push a British agenda. Then we ask, how many Britons were in that video? Just name for us how many Britons were in that video. How many Britons were shooting our young people? How many of them were battering our young people? How many of them were loading our young people into trucks to disappear and never be seen again? Name for us the British citizens who did that. And we can't get an answer. Then we ask, so KJ, where did common sense go to? You know, he used to act JJ Kamotho in Ridiculous, and I think he was rehearsing. Now he's become the real JJ, because how do you follow an administration so blindly? I think KJ owes this country an apology. And all those members of parliament who stood in that parliament to say that Blood Parliament was a bad documentary. Because I have looked at that documentary and I've asked, what is untrue? I wish they were saying minute 13 or minute 17 or minute 3. This part here is Photoshop, is AI, is edited. But that's not the thing. The thing is, it is true and we hate it, so whoever brought the truth is a criminal.
Maybe they hate the truth.
They wouldn't love it.
I mean, if I imagine, of course, most politicians don't like being told the truth. Yes. And something that they're doing at the moment, we are having the CDF public participation going on. I don't know if you've seen how that is happening and what you think about it. And also, should we follow the courts and just get it out of MPs, then MPs can do their core mandate job, it's called oversight.
Oversight, representation,
and legislation.
and legislation.
Or should we then just allow them to continue so they can have the bursaries which they fight for?
Number one, already, first and foremost, Kenyans, my name is Fanya Mambo Kinuthia, and I want to say something because this is important. Around 30th of January 2024, I appeared on a media show and I spoke passionately about bursaries for the first time in a way they had never been spoken about. And I explained how an MCA has a bursary and a governor and a senator and a women rep. And I also explained why that needed to be abolished. And people thought I was mad. And I would go ahead to explain that Kenya spends 17 billion on free primary education and then another 10 billion on free secondary, on subsidizing secondary education. So that comes to about 27 billion. I would go ahead to explain why we are having so much more money being spent on bursaries than we are spending on free primary and secondary education. I thank God that later that year, Karongo Adhangwa, the senator for Kiambu, picked up that story and he took it to Senate and he debated it very well. And on the 23rd of August, 2024, the Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Wetangula, would go out there and say that Parliament needs to discuss the bursary issue. And on the floor of Parliament, a figure came out for the first time. Now, the total monies we spend on bursaries is 106 billion. Now, wait a second. We spend 27 billion every year on free primary and secondary education. But we spend 104 billion on bursaries. So 104 billion is about 5 times what we spend on this. So literally, if we abolished these bursaries and put that money into the schools directly, we would have free primary and free secondary education, 100%. Would even have surplus left to help us with university. That fight that I began in January last year, right now, Junet Mohammed has been given the mandate to form a committee of 13 in Parliament. I can say this authoritatively. And those 13 people are now discussing how to amalgamate the bursaries into something. So I thank God that the voice of Fanya Mambo that people used to say, we anaendanga tu TV kupiga kelele, has brought us to a place where the whole country can now begin to save 104 billion. It's a conversation that had not been had anywhere else. I started the conversation, and I am happy to say I'm seeing the results of it. So can you imagine if today Kenya was to save 104 billion? That nonsense you see with MPs about bursaries would come to an end. And every child would go to school in a dignified way. Now, that is one issue. Leave it. Let's go to what MPs are doing with bursary. Some MPs had become completely and totally irrelevant after voting yes to the finance bill. They were unable to go back home. There was no way they would have stepped in their constituencies. My member of parliament set up a very big tent. People said that he spent more on the tent and chairs and decoration.
I saw that conversation online.
That he actually disbursed. And our people were kept sitting there from 9 in the morning until 6 in the evening, being given UDA propaganda. Hey, Wanambua, hey, now Ruto must stay. Wangapi wanasema, what choice do you have? And they are looking at you, kose kuinua mkono hiyo basi alipewe mtu mwingine. Our people have been made so poor and so impoverished. I saw the budget, the head of budget committee from, I think, Molo. What is his
Kuria
name?
Kimani.
I prefer to forget his name because he put us through horrible things.
He's my friend, I won't forget.
And he was there. And he was telling people so many UDA things, a lot of rubbish that those people could not want to hear. But they had to keep saying yes. Wangapi wako na President Ruto sisi wote. And he's looking. Ukose kuinua hautapewa bursary. Now what they are doing, they are dividing. If they wanted to give, say, 2,000, 3,000 checks, they come and give 1,000 now and sell UDA propaganda. And then they tell all of you who want your checks, come the following Saturday to another village. And then now they will keep you there and force you to listen to UDA propaganda all through. And then in the evening at 6 p.m., you get your checks for 3,000 shillings a piece. It has become a tool for manipulation of our people. Today, they have called for public participation. And they've realized that the bulk of the people may not want to go because those MPs are unpopular. So many of them have said that they're going to issue CDF bursary checks on that day of public participation. So what happens? Do you have a choice? And you're told to be seated by 10 a.m. so that we start giving you checks, knowing very well that they'll give you the checks after 6, after they've given you their propaganda and they have forced you to go into a public participation exercise that is telling you to approve NGCDF so that it can be constitutionalized.
I think I have to invite Kuria Kimani and KJ MPs to come and clarify, because I have not visited their respective constituencies and can't defend them on that. But it would be good if they came and clarified to us.
I am happy to allow them to come here. But the people of Dagoretti will tell you, they got their checks in the evening at 6, after a whole day of propaganda. And this is misuse and abuse of our people. Because they are impoverished and they are poor, and they need that 3,000 bob, they need that 5,000 bob. They will sit there and listen to anything. They will clap for anything.
Okay, let's not discuss the two again. At this point, I want to understand, if for instance, CDF was taken away from MPs, do you believe we will have a parliament that works for the people?
Okay. First, let me ask you, what is the connection between my taxpayers and my member of parliament in terms of it going to school? Kwani government haijui geography ya Aquinas High School ama Mangu ama where? What don't they know? The government has a record of how many children are in this country. And by the way, when you give an MP, say an MP decides to disburse 30 million in CDF and divides it into checks of 3,000, those are about 10,000 checks. The check processing fee in Kenya is about 120 shillings per check. Multiply by 10,000, we are going to lose about 1.2 million on banking transaction fees. Multiply 1.2 million by about 290 constituencies. That's in excess of 300 million lost to transaction fees only. How many children would 300 million shillings educate? Now that is only for MPs. MCAs siku hizi wako na bursary. 1,500 elected MCAs, 1,400 and something. They are close to 1,500 elected MCAs all have bursaries. If each was to give 1,000 bursaries, which they do, and the check processing fee of each of those is 120 shillings, that's 1.2 million shillings lost per ward, times 1,500 wards. We are losing in excess of billions of shillings on check processing fees only for bursaries.
Still back to my question.
Yes, that's why I'm saying what we need to do is to inspire the culture of common sense and say, because this money usually ends up in schools, why don't we give it to the Ministry of Education and subsidize school fees for every child significantly? Then we don't have to have people queuing. We don't even need to have those tents. Whether that tent costs 10 shillings or 1 million or 5 million, it's not necessary, because that money would have gone straight from government to the respective schools. You just need to say, how many schools do we have in Kenya? There are 22,000 polling stations. The bulk of them are schools. Now, the government has a list of them. So divide the available 104 billion times this, divide by this number of schools, distribute that money equally to all government schools. Labda mzazi ataitishwa school fees ya shilingi 500.
Or none for that matter.
Or none for that matter. In fact, there will be surplus, which we can then take to university and do the same. Just ask University of Nairobi, hey, how much does it cost to educate one teacher, Bachelor of Education? X amount per month. Okay, per year. Good. Now, if we give you these billions, it reduces everything. Yeah. So a parent would have paid for their child 40,000 per sem, ends up paying maybe 11,000. So you don't need help. You abolished. You don't need the university funding model. You abolish. Because this money goes directly to the institutions of learning. And anybody who qualifies finds money waiting for them.
Very ideal world. So if we pull away bursaries and all that, do you think MPs will do their 3 constitutionally defined mandates? And how will that change the country?
They will. One of them is a representation. So it is easy for an MP to come back from home with a list of how many roads are bad, and to say, in my constituency, this is the problem I have. So that as the Ministry of Roads and Public Works is making allocations for the roads, he's able to come to campaign so that his constituency is put on the map of those places that are going to be developed. That comes with the representation. If there are people, for example, who are having a huge problem of malaria attack, He's able to come to the floor of the House. He's able to speak to the committee on health and say, we need an intervention specifically for my constituency because of malaria. So that is representation, and it can happen very well. And the odds are different for every other person. Some of them will say we have insecurity in our area. There is a committee for security in Parliament. And as they do that, they can debate it on the floor of the House and decide, wait, some places are not as insecure as ours. Why can't we get a heavier deployment of security in my area? That is representation of the people. It does not require anything extra other than the MP salary. Oversight. There's a lot of things that are going on. Like now we have a CS, for example, in charge of communication. And the CS for communication can be called to Parliament to give a statement on why the Blood Parliament, for example, documentary is causing so much furor. That is oversight. And they put the PS to task, and the PS explains to Parliament, and Kenyans have now a better understanding of the whole issue. Then legislation. Making of laws and amendment of laws can happen. But now this third one requires a lot of common sense. Actually, legislation requires that people go to school. Sarah, let me tell you. Do you know that the way a Kenyan buys a cow from the market, is more thorough than the way they vote? When a Kenyan is buying a cow from the market, they ask the mother of this cow, the father of this cow, the bull, ni ya wapi? They ask, have you been to a veterinary? Has it ever had asthma? They ask so many things. The way they buy a cow is so thorough. But when they come to voting for an MP or an MCA, they ask, akona birth certificate, si ni Mkenya, tumpatie kura, yeye ndio alinipea 100. So when we come now to legislation, is where we have to say, the standards that, people usually ask me, I tell them it's very simple. The standards that you use to buy a cow from the auction or from the market or the goat are the standards you should apply when you're going for an MP. Ametoka wapi, ni wanani, akona historia gani. They ask so many, akona kilo ngapi. That, education amefikisha wapi. Because legislation, if you see a bill in Parliament, by the way, it's in legal language. The English there is not simple. Let's not lie to one another. The English that makes the bills of Parliament is not simple English. So don't get a class 3 there. They won't fit.
Or the Swahili.
Because
it's a language allowed.
Yes, but get someone who understands what is written. So, and there are some who are not able to read and write, and they probably keep telling us, and they wear white trousers. So let's be careful with them, and let us say that the 3 laws can be done. But when you think of legislation, please get to someone who's been to school.
That's very good food for thought. To us Kenyans, we need to do better. If we expect better of our leaders, then their quality must be really somewhere, because that's the only way they will make sense in Parliament. Now, coming back to the political space of the opposition in Kenya, over the weekend we saw the Wamunyoro visit, and it had everyone in opposition, I think, although the president has rubbished them as tribal meetings. What is your take on that whole Wamunyoro meeting?
It is a good meeting. Because whether you call it tribal or you call it whatever, it was a good meeting. At least it had the face of Kenya. I saw Eugene Wamalwa, he's not Kikuyu. I saw Fred Matiang'i, he's not Kikuyu. I saw quite a number of leaders from all parts. Kalonzo Musyoka is not Kikuyu. And there were so many other leaders who came from all parts of the country together for a prayer session. And what did they say? They were saying what Kenyans want to hear. That there is a high national calling. The highest national calling we have in Kenya right now is to make sure that Ruto does not win the presidency in the next election. That's the highest national calling we have as a nation. And we are all galvanizing ourselves around it. Because this president has taken us to very deep places that we never thought we would go. Socially, morally, economically. When we get to a place where people die and people speak the way they are speaking, it shows that even our social values have been decayed and they have been, affected. So the conversation is a good one. And I like what they said, because sometimes you listen to the content of what they said. they said that each one of them is willing to sacrifice their own individual ambition at the altar of what is more important for all Kenyans. And what is most important for all Kenyans is Ruto must go.
What is new about these people who've been in the systems for, say, 30 plus years, all of them actually?
What is new about them is that this time round, for the first time, they are rallying behind what Kenyans want. And what do Kenyans want? They want William Ruto to go home.
Isn't that what even the president promised us in the previous election?
No. For the longest time, we've had leaders who were not rallying behind what was the will of Kenyans. This time round, these people are listening to what Kenyans are on, and that is what is new for us. That we have these same monkeys who've been in the same forest, but this time around, these monkeys are saying, wait a minute, kuna mahali inafika inakuwa too much. Otherwise, I know the bulk of them, if you ask them, each of them may have had an invitation to join government in one form or the other. The fact that they have declined means that they are on the right side of history. For once, let's not bash people who are fighting the same fight we are fighting. You know, what do Kenyans want? They want Ruto must go. They want somebody else to be president and not William Ruto. Why are you busy fighting the people who are also leading the same cause? I keep telling Kenyans, join them. Work with them because you are walking towards the same direction.
You know, there's also a faction of Ruto Kumi Bila break because they believe he's done the best for the country.
Kumi Bila breaks. I listened to that. But I heard that Kenyans are adding a letter A after Kumi hapo. Just after Kumi Bila breaks, they're adding a letter A. You read that for yourself. And that's exactly what's happening. We are allowed to have people who think like that. By the way, I did not expect William Ruto to get 0 votes. I would be stupid to me, imagine. He will get a few votes. They won't be 0. And those few votes are the people who are saying Kumi Bila breaks. If you want Kumi, you can add A at the end. But that's what they are doing. They will continue campaigning for him because he butters their bread. They are direct beneficiaries from his administration. So they will say, some of them are bloggers, I know. I call them affordable bloggers. If you pay them to speak about something, they'll speak about it. Tomorrow, when your money is over, they leave you and ask, do you have money? Then they speak his agenda. When he's not paying anymore, they move to him. Those people have no spine of their own.
I mean, these people you're talking about, you want to tell me it's a Damascus moment for all of them, having served for over 30 plus years. And I ask this considering what most of the young people say, that they want none of those.
You see, our young people are fantastic. They're fantastic in the sense that they will tell you they don't want Wamunyoro, they don't want Eugene, they don't want Matiang'i, they don't want. Then you ask them, what do you want? They will say they want new leadership. You ask them, do you have a new leader in mind? They don't have. Are you going to offer yourself? They are not going to offer themselves. So you're leaderless, you are partyless, you're tribeless, you are all those things less. And you're also less of ideas. I'm telling young people, if we do not create 290 new members of parliament, imagine the bad guys will create them. So don't sit there and imagine that a beautiful prince will come from somewhere and become president of the Republic of Kenya. No. Either you organize yourselves or you offer yourself positions. I keep telling them, where I am vying, if they don't vote for me, the guy who told them that they abducted themselves will come back. The guy who told them that BBC, that there was Photoshop, there was no maandamano, will come back. So it is the choice of young people in Dagoretti South to make me their member of parliament, or to have the guy who told them that when they were undermining, it was Photoshop. And he said it in parliament and on national TV. So it is for us young people to start saying, seriously, wait a minute. Tunasema hatutaki Matiang'i, na hatutaki Wamunyoro, na hatutaki Eugene, na hatutaki Kalonzo, lakini hatuleti yule tunataka. In short, what do you want, William Ruto? And even those who are singing the same, you are the same young people who sang Ruto must go. And now, Eugene Wamalwa and Kalonzo and Wamunyoro and Matiang'i and all the others, they have listened to you, my good friends, the Gen Zs and millennials. They've listened to you. Now, they are championing a journey towards removing Ruto. Then you start saying, stop fighting for us. Stop going towards that direction. Stop that journey of wanting to remove William Ruto. If they were to stop, how would William Ruto not cease to become head of state? And then these young people who are telling them to stop, they are not offering an alternative. I wish they were saying, hatuko na akina wa Munyoro na hao wengine, lakini tuko na candidate wetu na ni fulani. Then every other punk person can vet these young people and support them. I personally wanted to offer myself for presidency. But I said, wait a minute. If I do that right now, what are my chances? Then I looked around and I realized even those people who are telling me go for presidency, some of them are yet to pick votes. Some of them will not be voting. Then we are telling them, be part of the plan to bring what you want.
So the goal is to be part of the plan.
Yes.
And as young people, I mean, IBC will be constituted probably in the next 1-2 weeks.
Yes.
Ensure you register and pick your voting cards because, I mean, if you want any change in 2027, the ballot carries the power and hopes of a nation, I believe. What do you think is the effect of Fred Matiang'i? I mean, he wasn't part of, I mean, there were Monyoro had all these other people we've been seeing meetings, but Matiang'i has just come in. So what's the impact of Matiang'i on the national politics and on this 2027 campaign of President journey?
First is Matiang'i has had an impact. First from home, by the way, because I remember when he came, he went home. You know, when Raila Amolo Odinga was having a conversation with William Ruto, he would have a conversation from the point of numbers that 2013, from 2002, in every election he's vied all the 5. He's garnered 48 or 49% of the total votes cast. Always. In fact, the one that he did the worst, he garnered 47%. And part of this 47% was his Luo Nyanza block, and then the Kisii Nyanza and Western, plus now other regions.
And coasts.
And for now, whether we like it or not, imagine the whole of Gusii Nyanza is gone. It's gone. I don't see anybody from Gusii Nyanza who will not follow Matiang'i and follow Raila. So the bulk, let's say 95% of Gusii Nyanza is gone. That is Baba's support. Now, Western used to be, in fact, Mudavadi would vie in Western against Raila. And Raila would get more votes in Western than Mudavadi. Now, Western is singing Tawe. The bulk of it is Tawenized by Natembeya. And Natembeya, you can see clearly, is not part of the broad-based government. So what was Raila's bargaining chip into the UDA government has been significantly reduced and taken away from him. What Matiang'i has done is effectively, before we can even speak of other places, he has taken away Gusii Nyanza. Then we have a lot of people who believe in Matiang'i, and they are all over social media. Young, pragmatic people who believe in the leadership of Matiang'i. They saw what he did at Interior. They saw what he did, especially at education. And so those ones also have left wherever they were and followed Matiang'i. So he has a significant following, which we cannot wish away. Having the arithmetics on table is not easy because we can't be able to say he took 1 million or 2 million or 3 million. But he's had a significant following. He has taken with him. And therefore, he brings to the table a lot of excitement. Plus also, this is the national outlook of this outfit. They used to say Wamunyoro was a tribal leader. Now that he has Kalonzo with him, wakaanza kusema, ni Wakikuyu na Wakamba. Then Eugene came in. They said, hana kura mingi kutoka Western. But now Matiang'i is here and he's brought everything from Gusii Nyanza, everything. So you can no longer call that a tribal outfit. It now is a collection of very many tribes. And it's also a collection of the aspirations of very many people. Because Matiang'i, beyond the votes and the tribal affiliation, he carries aspirations. There are people who believe in that kind of leadership. You know, the Magufuli kind of leadership. Because he used to come and he would bulldoze, but he bulldozed on the right things. I mean, like education, today, if you see a yellow bus, it's automatic, it's a school bus. You know, Kitambo, like now when you're driving on our roads today, when you see a yellow bus, you have this feeling of, there are angels in that bus. Kitambo, it took you time ndio ujue hii ya blue, then ya green, then ya purple. What school is this? So the impact of Matiang'i can be seen and heard and felt. For the first time, I saw children, and I'm not campaigning for him, but it's the truth. For the first time, we saw children who came from schools that were not known, from families that were poor, from villages that we were hearing the first time. Ati ndiko kameongoza the whole country. Ako katoto kahapo. It feels very nice. So Matiang'i did something that very many leaders before him had not been able to do. And that is what is drawing people's attention. And actually, that's the first time he came to the limelight. This minister who is opening a container at 4 a.m., what's wrong with his head? The others are sleeping. 4 a.m., he's opening 3-4 containers. And there's a child from a village that we have never heard of, from a school without a gate. Watch, hizi zilikuwa na school bus na wanakula snacks. A school without a gate. And that child is leading the country because he took fairness back to where it belonged, so that every child got their marks. Now, ujinga ya kumark exams for two months, ikaisha. Short time, done. So the people who had that kind of idea of a leader, they saw Matiang'i as that leader. And so he changes the dynamics completely, because now politics also becomes issue-based.
Changes the dynamics.
Yeah, because again, shortly, the Abahusi are not so very many in this country. And we are about to move to where Tanzania is. The bulk of Tanzanian presidents have come from very small tribes. But Tanzania has 102 tribes. And the big tribes like the Chaga have never produced a president. And that's where Kenya is going to. A time when an Oromo, a Pokomo guy, munasemanga watu ni wachache. But guys look and they say, no. Sasa toa kila kitu, toa tribal numbers. And you have an Oromo guy for president. I think Matiang'i would bring that kind of hope. If he became president, the kisses are not many. When you do the tribal tally, they are not top 5. They are not. So, hey, these guys, they've produced a president. It would be a good thing.
I think for Tanzania, it's good to mention they are very big on parties, political parties, more than what we have here, which is the tribal thing. And also, it would be interesting to hear from the teachers that practiced during the Matiang'i era, their experiences.
He harassed them.
Because I think there were so many stories that were done. And I won't stop saying it. I feel, and I hope, hopefully, Dr. Matiang'i, you will come on the show soon. He needs to clarify several issues when he was at the Ministry of Interior. And because, you cannot cover your head over things that you did. And if you want to lead a country, then you have to start somewhere. And let's speak truth to power. So hopefully he will be on the show soon, and we will put to him the questions and concerns of many Kenyans around that issue. So your closing remarks?
Oh, we're already there?
Yeah, we're there.
I think it's a sad place to be where we are right now. That 2.5 years into an administration, we are having a conversation about the next election. And we are having a conversation about tribal numbers and saying we have this block, and we are looking for this block. 2.5 years into this administration, there are people who we lost last year that we don't know where they are. And we cannot be able to explain whether we shall ever be able to see them again or not. And the people who did that are looking for another term. But also, most importantly, I want to address any human being who calls themselves a blogger. And I want to tell these people who call themselves bloggers, please be careful. There are people who have been paid by certain members of parliament, governors or senators or whatever, who have done really, really horrible things to people. Things that those people are trying to forget. And then you've been paid to just go online and keep selling them in WhatsApp groups and, because you just care so much about your own stomach. You can even sell rotten meat to people. If you're a blogger, we know you must eat. But a time has come when the national interest is more important than your stomach. We come from constituencies and wards and places where you see some of the most horrible leaders who have done and said the most horrible things are being pushed by people who do nothing else other than go online and stop the objectivity of Kenyans. So as we deal with bad leaders, let us also talk of bad citizens, because bad leaders are put in place and supported by bad citizens. and they do it for their own benefit and for their own stomachs at the expense of the general population. If you're in that category of human beings, please, it's time to rethink and ask yourself. And by the way, immediately after elections, they won't need you as a blogger. Now they'll need you the next time they feel things are bad and they want you to sell a certain kind of public opinion that they want you to shape. So let us be cautious. That is one group of our society that we don't have anything we can do about them. They are our brothers and sisters, but let their stomachs not come before the interest of the nation. Yeah.
That is where I remember Professor Saitoti said there comes a time when the nation is more important than
an individual.
Yeah. So, good ending at that. I hope you enjoyed and learned something. You can tell us what you think in the comments section. I see we actually read all your comments, and we will catch you on the next episodes.